everything off with the panel, I'm going to give our 4 panelists a chance to introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about their minors that they represent. So Fritz, if you want to go ahead and start us off.
Thank you, Keith, and thank you for everybody to show up today. My name is Fritz Roca. I'm relatively new at FGCU. I'm starting my 3rd year, which means that the agribusiness program is also equally as new. It got started, I guess, the fall of 2018, and our first classes started to begin in about 2019, and first full breadth of our classes started in the, I guess, the fall of 2019. So we're starting our 3rd full academic year. Our objective, because you think agribusiness and FGCU don't kind of go together sometimes. I mean, that's been the reaction we've had with a lot of folks. If you know agriculture, you think of Florida or Florida A&M as the 2 ag schools in Florida. But we started this agribusiness program with 2 objectives in mind. One, to help FGCU students become more aware of the food system that brings food and other products from the farm fields to your dinner tables. That's the first objective. The second objective, and maybe more relevant to this discussion, is that we want to promote the idea, or actually the fact, that any degree that you can earn at FGCU can lead to a dynamic and exciting career in the agribusiness space. So there's a vast majority of jobs out there, and none of them require farm experience as a prerequisite. First thing we've said, when people say agribusiness, the first thing they think of, I've got to drive a tractor, I got to pick tomatoes, I got to, be in the ground. If you want to do that, that's great. I'm sure you can find a spot doing that. But the vast number of jobs, and right now we're estimating about 20% of US jobs are in the food sector related to actually managing crops and produce and other things that leave the farm. So that's we want to convey that message to everybody else. If I have a little more time, I guess we can get into it more, but if you're someone that likes to discuss, debate, argue, whatever, issues of sustainability, then think about agribusiness, because we are right in the middle of a lot of stuff. We hit all 3 Ps of sustainability. Yes, these farms and operations been for a profit, but there's a lot of questions about how we affect the planet and how we affect people and communities. So with that, thank you very much, Keith, for inviting me.
Absolutely. Rachel, do you want to go next?
I certainly will. Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel Walter. I am an adjunct faculty member at the Honors College here at FGCU. And I'm also a senior planning analyst for our strategy and innovation division at Lee Health. I'm a longtime FGCU fan. I did both my undergrad and grad degrees at FGCU. My undergrad was in biology and political science, and my master's was in environmental studies. So a little bit of a big breadth of, of majors there. And I think that's what really connects me to that medical humanities minor. Medical humanities is just finding the human part in any discipline that you are interested in. For me, that's medicine and public health, right? Like the healthcare industry is certainly an industry, and it's certainly timely today as we navigate COVID and things like social equity. So I think that public health is really, really important, and finding the human piece and things like economics and art and sociology and the healthcare and public health is very, very important and super timely. And so I think it's also like a really ultimately, it's like the ultimate flexibility of a profession, of a minor as a discipline, the medical humanities, because you can apply it to so much. And right now we have such a high demand for people that have that systems thinking, right? Like we need more people thinking of the systems and not, oh, this is an economics problem, we're only going to let the economists deal with this. This is a healthcare problem, we're going to let the doctors deal with that. We need a systems approach to these larger than life problems, and that medical humanities minor is a really great place to start delving into issues that really need the systems approach.
Great, thank you for that introduction, Rachel. Okay, Brent, do you want to tell us a little bit about your area?
Sure. My name is Brent Baker. I'm an associate professor here at FGCU, and I teach all of the sales courses. That includes a course in professional sales, advanced professional selling, sales management, customer relationship management, things like that. Like Fritz, I got here in the fall of 2019. So I'm finishing up my second full term here on campus, just because of the events of the last year and a half. And also, like Fritz's minor, the professional selling minor is a brand new one, well, relatively new since the fall of 2019. What is happening in the world of collegiate sales is actually a really exciting thing right now. I don't know how many people, listening to this know this, but the studies have shown that about 50% of all majors across the university, their first job is in sales, either in sales or supporting the sales staff in some way. I know over here in marketing, it's about 80% of the students, their very first job is in sales. So there's a high demand from employers for people who know how to sell things, right? They know how to engage in the interpersonal activities that can be convincing and persuasive, and but more importantly, provide value and benefit customers and the people that you're doing business with in some way. And for a long, long time, universities kind of shunned sales. They really sort of looked down on it, believe it or not. Somewhere along the way, they decided that, this is an opportunity to start preparing. University said this is a point of differentiation for us. We can start preparing people for the things they're going to be doing when they leave. So sales as a point of competitive advantage these sales programs started to develop around the country. And it's getting to the point now where they're pretty much everywhere. Sales programs across the United States it's almost like you wouldn't go to a business school that doesn't have a program in accounting. I could see that becoming the norm for sales within, say, the next 10 or 15 years. And so what we're doing here at FGCU is just really trying to keep up with the trends, but more importantly, try to provide some value for our students and equip them and give them the tools that they need to be competitive and attractive to the employers who are going to be looking for them when they graduate, because sales is one of the hardest jobs to fill. And be in FGCU, if we can prepare our students to fill those opportunities, we see it as a point of differentiation for us. So that's what's going on with us.
Thank you. And then Kara, do you want to go over a little bit of your area?
Yes, that's a perfect segue because my field is very similar. And I am a professor teaching public relations courses at FGCU. And our public relations program is inside the communication department, or the communication program here at FGCU in the Department of Communication and Philosophy. And so rather than in the business school, we're in the communication wing of the university. And it's very similar to strategies used in marketing and sales. So public relations is a concentration within the major of communication, but one can also minor in communication, and one can also take the public relations courses in the concentration without it being a formal major, because it's open to any students as long as you follow the prereq track. A lot of people wonder what the heck public relations is, so I thought maybe I'd just explain that a little bit. But public relations is the strategic process of communicating through a variety of channels based on what's best for the audience. So in this day and age, most people realize that social media is a really important communication strategy. So public relations utilizes social media, but lots of other communication channels, such as earning publicity through news media coverage, websites, blogs, special events is a particular area of interest for a lot of our students. Public relations professionals are often the one who are planning events for businesses and organizations. And I think it's particularly relevant to note that there is a lot of people understand better what marketing is than public relations. But in today's industry, the line is really blurred between public relations and marketing, and a lot of PR professionals do a lot of public relations and marketing functions both. At FGCU, the public relations track starts with the Principles of Public Relations course, which is open to anyone. It's PUR 3100 if anybody's interested in taking that and checking it out and seeing what's involved in the PR industry. And then there are additional courses if you want to take all of the PR. There's two writing courses as an option, research strategy, and our program ends with a capstone course where students plan a real PR campaign for a real company here in Southwest Florida, which is always a lot of fun. What's exciting about public relations is that the field is really, really dynamic and vast, and you can do a lot with it. as a major, a comm major with a concentration in public relations, or just taking the public relations courses. There's really 4 areas in the career realm for students to pursue after they're earning their degree. One of those is in corporate PR, which is again an area that students are often very interested in and familiar with, but that's doing public relations and communication strategies for for-profit businesses. A lot of students are interested in sports or fashion or beauty, and there's lots of opportunities for jobs in those fields. But nonprofit public relations is another really interesting area that's available to students. And many students shy away from that, thinking you can't make money, but you can. You still have a good income working for nonprofit organizations, helping them with communication and sometimes fundraising strategies. And sometimes that's even a little bit more fun because you're also promoting a cause, which is really makes it a little bit more fun, to go home knowing at the end of the day you help make the world a better place. There's also government public relations opportunities, which again, some students aren't familiar with. Government agencies need help with communications as well. And these have lots of good entry-level jobs with good benefits, which is really important. And then another last area of public relations is working for public relations and marketing firms. And this is where you work for a firm that represents a lot of different companies and organizations. And this is vital because you can get a lot of experience very fast in a very dynamic environment. So I think that public relations careers are really exciting, dynamic, fast-paced, and enjoyable. And you can really move around. The process of planning effective communication strategies works regardless of the industry. So you could work, for several years in corporate PR and then maybe segue to nonprofit or government, or work in a firm and get experience with all of those. So I really enjoyed teaching in this area. And I also had a career in public relations before teaching. And so I find it very exciting, and I love helping students try to navigate what might be of interest to them in the field.
Great. Thank you for that amazing introduction. I do have to say we were one of those local employers that the capstone took on last year.
Yes.
I was super impressed by the quality of the work that students came up with for how we could better market our office's services. So I know that your students are getting great experience in that course.
Excellent.
So kind of leading off what a lot of you talked about was some of these key things that your minors bring to the table. Thinking about why a student would want to pursue a minor in your areas, what would each of you say is the #1 reason a student should consider your minor? I'll give everyone a few seconds to think about it, and then whoever wants to go first, I'll kind of watch your language.
Well, I'll go ahead and kick it off. I mean, what could be more important than your daily bread, where your food comes from? I think it's extremely important, more so than it was, even a generation ago, that we pay attention to where our food comes from and how it gets to our dinner plates or wherever we consume food. I can speak for myself. I didn't grow up on a farm, but I had an uncle that managed dairy cows, so I had a chance to watch him do what he did. But my kids certainly didn't have that same opportunity. So I think the more we get away from the farming experience or from the agricultural production experience, the less we are aware, and then we have to deal with information about such things as pesticides, as GMOs, as international trade issues between Mexico or Brazil and how that affects Florida. And I think not having that connection with agriculture makes it harder to understand those very important issues. So understanding where your food comes from is certainly a big deal. And also living in Southwest Florida, our environmental issues have become heightened, and how we deal with blue-green algae, red tide, wildlife issues. And again, as I said before, production agriculture is in the middle of all those major issues. And so I'd say that's the other reason why I think students should be at least aware of what's going on. And again, I would argue that as I think we all would agree, there's just exciting opportunities to get into this field. And in case you haven't thought of it before, and when I said it again, don't stop the fact that you didn't come from a farm and get involved in agribusiness. I mean, it's a misperception. So yes, it's kind of nice to know that what a farm looks like, and we can show you that. We can give you field trips. We can organize those. But there's so many other skills that are needed that our FGCU students could fill in the agribusiness space that does not require touching a cow or pulling a plant or planting a seed or whatever. I'll stop.
I think I got, I'm ready if that's okay.
Mhm.
Okay, I would say, you know, a minor in sales is because even if you go into sales or not, you're going into sales. 100% of us are salespeople. I mean, look at what we're doing right now. I think on this panel, I'm the only one with a real technically an obvious sales background, but what are we trying to do? Every single one of us is trying to sell our program. So why not learn how to do it? Selling is selling. And one of the things I say in my classes all the time is that it doesn't really matter what you're selling, when you're selling, or who you're selling it to. It's the same process. It's the same idea of learning what somebody else needs and using the tools that you have available to them to provide value and help make their world better. But there's a process to that. There's a certain way you go about it. And what we provide is the opportunity to learn how to do well and at a high level what you're going to end up doing anyway, right? When you go on a job, the job interview for me is the best sort of not really analogy. It's your first real professional sales job, is going in and getting the job. So the job interview follows the process the exact same way a salesperson would go about selling something to a prospect or a customer. So I guess sort of in summary, where's the value in learning how to do sales? It's in the fact that you can apply it in your everyday life. You're already doing it, whether you realize it or not. So why not come get the education to make you better at something that you're already doing?
I could add to that if it's okay for me to go next.
Sure.
Also, I think in the public relations courses, the reason to take it is we're doing real world public relations, very practical tasks. We don't do term papers. We write news releases, or we write social media posts. We plan social media content that companies are using every day. And so you're doing real world tasks. And I find that really exciting for our students. I had a student recently tell me that he got an internship because in an interview, he mentioned a project that he did in class, and it's exactly a task that they wanted him to be able to do in the internship. I had 2 students in the last 2 weeks who are working on a service learning project in my nonprofit public relations class. Write a news release for the project, but gave it to the nonprofit organization who actually sent it out to reporters, and it got picked up in local publications. There's a story in the Naples Daily News today, written basically because of one of our students and the project that she was doing in our class. So they're doing real world practical assignments that are helping community or partners in the community, and will prepare them to get jobs. So they'll have lots of things to talk about in job interviews and skills that they can use immediately in internships and jobs. All of our students in the concentration and in the major have to have an internship, and the professors and the staff in our department do a really good job of connecting students with employers, and they can put those skills that they're learning in the classroom to work right away.
Yeah, and I think I'll add on to that as well. I like to use public health and medical humanities kind of synonymously. They're a little bit the same thing. I think maybe medical humanities, you're a little bit STEM averse, like you don't want to do the math or the science, and that's totally fine because they're both super necessary. For that medical humanities minor, I think if you just have an interest in health, period, it's a good fit, right? Health affects everybody. Everybody's concerned about it. Somebody else's health will absolutely affect yours. Think of COVID, right? Things like that are super obvious, but also food insecurity. If one community is food insecure, that's coming down to you. It absolutely affects everyone. It'll affect the money that you're spending on your own food. It'll affect all of these other different things. I think if you have a base interest in health and then any other interest, you'll find a really good spot in medical humanities. For example, if you're interested in emergency response, that really fits into medical humanities really well because we're working through an emergency response situation right now with COVID. If you have an interest in politics, there's certainly, think of masking, vaccination, that's super political, and that has a really good spot in medical humanities as well. Brent, something that you said about sales really resonated with me. You are so correct. Everything is sales. My career is in healthcare strategy. And there's two sides to strategy in healthcare. There's what's bringing us money, and then there's what's filling a demand in the community. I am not interested in the profit side. I am interested in that that demand in the community side. And sometimes they don't really even out very well. So where it might not bring us profit and we don't want to, go on a certain track in healthcare, I can say, hey, I know that's not going to bring us a lot of money, but look at this health trend in the community, right? Look at these overdoses of opioids in the community. I know that's not going to bring us a lot of money, but maybe that'll save us money on the back end from people coming in with extreme, needs for addiction services. So from that perspective, I am selling public health like crazy every single day. And it's such a necessary skill. And I think another part of that sales piece is the passion piece. You have to care about what you're talking about. And for me, that's public health. I have that base interest in health. I'm interested in the person and the people part of health. And, why do we even care about this? And that will really, really help your sales technique if you actually care about what you're talking about. So I think for me, just from a personal standpoint, choose something that you care about and just pursue it, right? Like, and that sales part, the sales training is so important. I see a lot of, cross tabs with what we're talking about. Kara's talking about public relations, and that reminds me of community engagement in public health. We heard about agribusiness and how food affects your health. Like, just think of how many things that affects. Then of course that sales piece, like how do you get, imagine trying to sell somebody on addiction therapy when they really need it, but don't necessarily want to do it, right? Like it really all folds into that health piece, just health in general. So picking something that you're just simply passionate about and that you wouldn't mind doing a 9-to-5 job and talking about with people on a call like this, that's the ticket. I think that is absolutely that's the goal, I think, is just to find something you're passionate about and pursue it.
Wow, thank you all so much for those great tips for everyone who might be considering these fields. I'm going to ask another question in a second, but before I do, I just want to let all of our students know, or all of our guests know, that if you have a question, you can feel free to drop it in the chat and I'll ask that one in the coming up rounds, or let me know that you have a question and I can call on you coming up to ask the question yourself. So while I'm asking this next one and we're getting the responses, be thinking of the things that you might want to know so we can make sure they get incorporated into this panel presentation as well. Now, for the panel, my next question would be, a lot of times when I'm working with students on the career advising side, I find they need something tangible that they can latch onto, a specific job title, a specific company, or someplace that they can see themselves working in. Who are some employers that hire or look for people with your specific minors or the skills that you're building? And maybe what are some specific job titles that students could look for?
Something that resonates with me, my first role out of FGCU, I was a community programs coordinator for Lee Health. And what an amazing job that is. So I think if you have any interest in, community engagement, medical humanities, public health, anything, in that sort of, vein, I think going that route works really well. Especially if you have an interest in healthcare, maybe Lee Health would be a great fit. Lee Health is always looking for talented undergraduate students or graduate students coming out of FGCU, especially in those community-facing careers. Another thing is these nonprofit organizations. Southwest Florida is nonprofit heavy. We have a lot of nonprofit, a lot of passionate people, and a lot of great philanthropy happening in our area. And there's a lot of need for these coordinator roles, community support, anything like project managers for these nonprofits that are really, really valuable. And you would get great experience, working in that, just everything, right? That sales, the public relations, the public health, medical, it's all of it. So, I think if there's interest in working with the community, I think going that nonprofit route is a really good start. And look for those, project manager, community programs, coordinator roles. I know there's a lot of grant writing roles, a lot of demand for grant writing too. So that's where I would start, and that's where I found my best fit out of FGCU.
I can speak.
I'll go with 3 job titles right off the bat. Primus Labs Food Safety Coordinator, Scotland Logistics Sales Coordinator, and a Communications Director for US Sugar, all of which could be pretty important, powerful roles, all touching all the other minors that we just talked about. I would also add to that, if you're into computers, data management is a huge issue. So software app development would be a worthwhile and a valued product. But even more important, taking the amount of volume, the data that comes into any business operation, especially agricultural operations, managing that data and extracting decision-making information from that data is I think a very valuable piece.
Entry-level jobs in public relations might sound something like communications strategist or communications coordinator, director of public relations, media relations specialist. But the great thing about public relations is, again, the variety. Whatever you like, you can find a way to do it in public relations. I have one of my projects in one of my classes where students have to envision their dream job in 10 years. And I had a student struggling with that. I said, well, what do you like? And she said, well, I'm passionate about triathlons. And I said, well, you can merge your love of triathlons with a love of public relations. She said, I can, how? And I showed her a nonprofit organization that helps athletes prepare for triathlons. And she not only got an internship with this organization, the organization hired her full-time as soon as she graduated. So I always ask students, what do you love? And then we find a way to marry that with a job in PR. But if they love sports, there's tons of jobs for sports public relations specialist. Beauty, there's tons of opportunities there. Whatever you're interested in, you can find jobs. Again, entry level is going to be more of a technician type role, lots of writers. And then, as you advance in your career, you advance more into strategy and planning. But there's a job for every interest that you might have in public relations.
Okay, so sales, this is a little bit of a tough one, believe it or not, but off the top of my head, the obvious sales representative, but also business development representative, account manager, and the list goes on and on. I say it's tough because it's a little ironic that we have all these different titles that are representing the same job, and it's a little controversial in that there are some salespeople who feel that these titles are nothing more than euphemisms to try to escape sort of the traditional stereotype of selling. And so they want something that represents more of what a person actually does. And in the world of professional selling, you have to go do new business and talk and manage a sales call. But a good part of their job is actually managing the relationship and staying in touch with your current customers. So they adopt things like account manager instead of, sales representative, but ultimately they're still selling. And those are some of the direct titles. Some of the indirect titles might, believe it or not, be branch manager. I know at Enterprise Rental Car, they hire a lot of our students to go into their management development or management trainee program. But the branch manager every month has new business quotas that they have to meet. So even though they call themselves a manager, they're actually at least a portion of their monthly job and their monthly responsibilities is to go find new business. So and even something maybe more relevant to our students is the title of server. Because they do the exact same things that these professional salespeople do, just in a different context and in a different environment. So any place where a customer needs help making the purchase decision is going to be, you're going to find a salesperson there. So some of the companies, where do I even begin? I brought up the website of the International Collegiate Sales Competition. FGCU, we're competing in that next week. And there's a large amount of sponsors, and I'm just looking at the sponsors list just really quick, reading some of them. Boston Scientific, Citrix, Dell Technologies, Diablo Tools, local, obviously, Enterprise, Gardner, Hertz, Arthrex, all of them hire our students for entry-level sales roles. So the opportunities, like I said, going back to what I was saying earlier, it's one of the hardest jobs to fill. And it's in a high need. It's in a high demand job. So there's a lot of opportunities for somebody who.
FGCU gives our students a pretty great opportunity in that they have to engage in service learning as part of their degree, which is really an awesome chance for them to try on different careers and build some practical experience. There's also many of our programs that encourage or require internships. Are there any specific service learning or internship opportunities that you can think of that they could use to build the skills they need to go into a career in these different areas we've talked about?
I'd love to start with that. This is one of my favorite areas to talk about. First, we do have service learning opportunities, specifically in our nonprofit public relations course. So this is an area students are interested in. Even if they're not a major, they could take the intro course, Principles in Public Relations, and then they could take the nonprofit public relations class after that, and would be able to work on a service learning project. We work on it all semester long. It's due next week for my students. And they go out and find a nonprofit organization that they're interested in so that it matches their passion and their interests. And they help that nonprofit organization with some communication and public relations strategies. And then they turn those into the organization, and and then hopefully the organization uses it. Like I said, the student has a story in the Naples Daily News today as a result of it. But also we have tremendous opportunities for internships in the public relation industry locally. The employers in our area are wonderful at taking on our students as interns. They work for for-profit companies, healthcare organizations, nonprofit organizations, government agencies. Again, anything you think you might be interested in, we can probably find an internship for you locally. We have a great internship coordinator and Professor Nikki Mann, and she helps students as I do with help from the other two public relations professors. We all help students land great internships, doing great things for, like I said, the gamut of relations is in nonprofit, for-profit, government agencies, and PR firms. There are PR firms locally that also hire our students as interns, and then they often segue those into full-time jobs. There's a public relations association, the Florida Public Relations Association. There's a Southwest Florida chapter. And last year at our annual awards banquet, we took a picture with all the graduates of FGCU who were in attendance, and literally half of the attendees of the event were graduates of FGCU. So we feel like the FGCU Eagles are taking over the PR industry here in Southwest Florida.
Anyone else want to chime in?
Yeah, I guess just to carry up on Kara said, I guess agribusinesses by definition are for-profit. So I guess the service learning doesn't count for for-profit. Internships obviously would, but not service learning. But if you think about food pantries, food banks, that could be a wonderful place where you can do service learning. And if you invest a little time to understand where that food's coming from, then you could sort of get a better idea of the of that. We just talked about the food network that brings food to whomever. I don't know the rules of service learning completely, but say if you work for a government agency, specifically thinking of our extension services that we have in each county that deal with the agricultural community, but also deal with other community organizations as well, especially in Lee and Collier County. They've got a number of agents, extension agents. This is University of Florida. So forgive me, FGCU, I'm promoting maybe somebody else's program, but FGCU students can work, I think, in those various programs that work with small farmers. They work with community groups, food deserts, trying to identify areas on how to improve food delivery services. So I want to say I want to speculate you can do service learning there, but of course I'd leave that to Mr. Fitzgerald to verify that.
Believe it or not, I actually have one area of service learning that I've used with some of my students, and it has to do with fundraising. I have this vision for an FGCU sales center, equipped, this is my dream, with a fully equipped sales lab with the software and the hardware that we need, sales scholarships, a fully outfitted sales team that isn't being held together as it is now with like duct tape and baling wire, which is essentially how we're getting by because it's such a new program. And so what I've been able to do and get permission to do is allow for students to go and connect and go out into the community and engage with the community and let them know about how sales is evolving here at FGCU and how the curriculum and how the training is evolving, with the idea that maybe they could get those community members to donate some money to the development of our sales program here And if they're able to do that, we can take some of the time that they put into developing those relationships and securing those funds and accrediting their service learning requirement with that. So that's one avenue that I've been able to explore when it comes to that.
Yeah, I think my take on this is don't do service learning just to check the box. That is like doing yourself such a huge disservice. I think it's really like natural for us to come into FGCU as students and to just, not like the idea of this mandatory service requirement. Like, we don't like it, we push back on it. It is such a wonderful opportunity. I just think that probably everyone on this call has heard, like, you need experience to get experience. Well, this is the way that you do that. And I think something really critical, like I don't have any, I have multiple nonprofit organizations in mind that are important to me, but I think the important part is find something that you're interested in. Kara was just talking about how she works with students to figure out, like, what are you passionate about? And then let's make that a career, right? Like, let's make that an actual experience for you. That's what you need to do. I always use it's kind of funny, I use this example, like, if you don't like dogs, don't do your service learning at walking dogs at a shelter, right? Like, you're going to terrify yourself. You're not going to have a good time. You probably won't get anything out of it except for the checkbox for the hours. So I think it's just, find something that you're passionate about, like a nonprofit that does something that it really resonates with you, right? And then just help them. I think that's the way, right? You're going to find whatever you love to do in that experience, right? Like, I think naturally we go into these experiences, you hear, something that they need. One time I went to the Friendship Center in Immokalee, and I had no idea what they were going to ask me to do. Could have been painting a wall, could have been anything. And they just asked me to reorganize their supply closet. That sounds really, really simple and really, like, kind of doesn't take any skill maybe. And, but it made such a tremendous difference for this organization. They don't have time to be rummaging through their supply closet. They need something that's grab and go. Luckily for me, I'm an organization just queen. And so I kind of entered that situation where I was like, oh my gosh, like, I'm doing something that I'm really good at. I have a way, I am visualizing the way that I want to execute this task. And I have made a tremendous difference for this community organization. And that has nothing to do with public health necessarily, but it has everything to do with community and what you did to help, help that community grow and, give some additional resources to this organization that's probably very under-resourced. So I think it's all about passion and just simply not checking that box. Do not do that. It is such a waste of a great opportunity.
Great, thank you for that, Rachel, because I think it's going to segue well into this question that I just got from one of our students. So Blaze says that he's an economics major and he's wondering what would be a good minor for him to get to go along with that. And from my perspective as a career advisor, how I would answer that is saying, well, any minor is going to be good to complement economics. It depends on what you want to do for a career. So we should probably start with identifying your career opportunities that you're looking at and figure out what pairs well for the skills you'll need going into that career. And I'm wondering if anyone else has perspectives on that they want to share to maybe help him with identifying some options that could be out there that he could take economics with your different areas.
Well, I thought of one idea right off the bat. There is a specialized area of public relations known as investor relations. And so for-profit companies that are publicly traded need professionals who are both skilled in economics and financial literacy and financial, all the things that maybe are among my weaknesses, but knowing can take the reports that are mandated by the SEC to report transparency on the financial health of a company and turn that into English that is then relevant to potential investors and the business community. So you could definitely pair economics with communication and specifically public relations and be an investor relations specialist.
I guess I got my training in agricultural economics, so maybe I have some idea of what. Is it Blaze? Is that what is that who asked the question? Well, employees, I think one of the first things you probably heard when you did your principles class is that in a free market or quasi-free market, there's unlimited wants and unlimited wants and limited resources. So the allocation problem, that's the crux of at least microeconomics. And so I think understanding costs and benefits should be in your wheelhouse if you like economics. And any one of us that represent these various careers, there's always a question of where do you get the best value for your resources? The main resources being your time. Don't think of it strictly as money, but think of it as your time. When you get the most benefit, in Rachel's case, your most passion. For Brent, when you get the biggest sales, I mean, in terms of your investment in time, and for Kara, where you get the biggest bang for your message. And so I think fundamental economics can teach you that and apply that principle to any discipline, any career that you actually get into.
Absolutely. Does anyone else want to weigh in on that or feel good?
I guess the only thing I would add to that is to one, obviously, this is probably what I'm assuming Rachel might say, is be honest with yourself, right? And figure out what it is that you want to do. But just to piggyback on that, one of the things that I don't think maybe gets said enough to students is try to take an inventory of what the world needs, right? So figure out who you are and what it is that you're trying to do, but also have a look. I know, because I would love to find a job where they paid me to sleep in and then watch TV, but they don't have that, right? So I had to go do something a little bit more productive. Which for me is, selling things and getting, showing people value and how they can be better off as a result of maybe buying something from me. So that would be the one thing that I would suggest, and maybe a way to figure out what he's really aligned with and really good and maybe really passionate about. A lot of the employers that I talk about this thing known as the Predictive Index, and it's sort of it's kind of a personality test, but it's supposed to help the individual figure out what fields are well aligned with their personality. And you can Google it and it'll come up, and it might be something that's worth the minutes it takes to go through that exam, just so that you start to get an idea of the different fields that are aligned with maybe your personality and who you are and what it is you like to do.
Yeah, I have another thing to add. I love that I'm so predictable with this group already. I think that, my background is in community health, and I work in a little bit of business strategy for healthcare. And I think there's a way that you approach business strategy, just, like a traditional business strategy, right? You want to increase your profit, you want to maximize favorable outcomes. And my approach is flipped. So where I am trying to, like where there might not be a profit increase, maybe there's a healthcare outcome increase, right? Like I want to reduce unfavorable outcomes. So I think what I'm trying to say here is that there's also diversity of thought that you can bring to a field. And I found my place there. Like I think there's maybe a picture we have in our heads about when we think of what does an economist do? What does this look like? What does a business person do? What does a salesperson do? You can bring your own kind of twist based on what you're interested in to that, and your organization will benefit because of that, because of the diversity of thought, right? For example, we were talking about behavioral health services. There's likely not a lot of profit margin in that for healthcare. But there is a huge demand in the community for those kind of services. And so, right, like how do you weigh that? Which one do you do? And you can do that by selling your, selling your pitch, right? Like selling public health data instead of selling, your profit data. So I think there's just a lot of room for you to bring your own diverse thought into a career path. And you can try to break that mold a little bit, right? Like we don't want robots working in healthcare. That's opposite of what we want. So how do we break that mold in our career paths to kind of bring that diversity of thought for better outcomes for the organization, for our community, for the world, right? Like, so I think it's a really important thing to do, to incorporate what you're passionate about, because it will not allow you to be a robot in your field.
Awesome. I think that was all great advice. And I'm going to use some of my professional sales skills now to talk a little bit about how our office could help you if you find yourself you're in that situation. So for anyone who's out there, if you're trying to think, what is a good minor that could maybe pair with what I want to do, or I need help identifying a career and what skills that career will require from me from a college education, please feel free to reach out to Career Development Services. We have a full team of career advisors that are here to assist you with navigating that conversation. We have some of those career assessments and personality inventories that Brent was talking about that you can take and we can interpret with you. So there's lots of resources that we can provide you and do a deep dive into just specifically you to help create those programs and those combinations that will get you to careers that you're hoping to find and that you'll be happy in. So we have about 10 minutes left. I want to see real quick from the audience again, does anyone else have questions they want to ask? Okay.
Keith, I guess I have a question.
Yeah.
I think what I found, that maybe different majors have different, I found this students nowadays have more of a difficult time, I think, doing a minor than maybe what they had in the past, because the majors require so much space. And especially given recent changes in the way you account for your credits. And if you take a couple mulligans early on in your academic career, then you kicked over this threshold and now you're paying more tuition for every additional credit hour. So we've come to appreciate that a lot of student majors have time constraints, or I call it space constraints. I mean, our minor says we need 6 classes. That's 18 hours. 18 hours or 6 classes. So how many students find 6 slots that are open without having to go that 5th year or into that 5th year or go over that credit limit that you're currently allocated? So I don't know. I don't know how to, it's a concern. I don't know how to answer that question other than encourage people to start as a freshman to think about their academic path. But I don't know. Do you have any, I guess that maybe it's more for a question for a student advisor, but I'd appreciate any thoughts that you might have on that.
Yeah, I definitely think when it comes to that, it's a tricky one. I mean, if you spend a year exploring, which sometimes is what we're encouraging people who are undecided to do, it can really burn through those free elective hours that you have and make it difficult to fit in not just your major courses, but anything on the side that you might want to pursue as a passion. I think what I would advise on that is the concept of parallel plans is while you're exploring, if you're thinking about multiple different fields that you could go into, talk to your academic advisor from the get-go or as early as you can about, you know, I'm thinking I want to major in psychology, but also do medical humanities or something in the medical field. Talk to them about that interest early on. So that way, when they're trying to figure out what are the best courses they can recommend to you, how can these maybe pair together where you get to experience both and use that as an exploratory bridge to decide which route you want to be predominant and which route you maybe want to have a minor in. So setting it up as early as possible is definitely the key, and having that open dialogue and continuous conversation with your advisor, because you never know too when the advisor might say, hey, maybe you should reach out to one of these minor coordinators and talk to them about, you have this course you took, could it potentially substitute in for another requirement? And I think making use, having that knowledge, and hopefully that our coordinators of our different minors across the campus are willing to work with students to find substitutes for the skills they might miss. So it's definitely something that goes through the academic advisor and having a very strong relationship there early on, and also a strong relationship with those coordinators.
If I could add one more thought too. A lot of majors require a certain number of upper division electives, and you could almost customize and make a little mini major by using those, you know, like if it's 3 upper division electives, then you can get 9 hours, say, for example, taking 3 public relations courses. And then it doesn't matter so much, I don't think, to employers what your degree says. So it's not so important that the degree says you have a minor in something, but that you can talk about, you know, on your resume, you can talk about relevant coursework. So if you know, again, key talking to your advisor, but use some upper division electives as a, you know, a way of making a little specialized area of interest. And then on your resume, you want to go for a job that where public relations, for example, is relevant, then you just mention that as relevant coursework and the experiences that you gained from those courses.
Absolutely. And if anyone ever has questions about how to sell that in a resume or spin it in an interview, our office helps with all of that too. And we can do some of that review with you and those practice interview questions to help you, coach you in how to answer and talk about the skills that you got from courses that maybe aren't highlighted by just your major's title or having that minor on your resume. Awesome. Well, there's about 5 minutes left, so I want to just wrap it up and see if anyone has any closing remarks or final pieces of advice they want to share before we end the session.
Maybe because I'm a PR professional, I'm always quick to hit that mute button and offer my. But there were 2 things I wanted to mention. If anybody is interested in more information, you can follow. We have a FGCU Communication Careers profile on both Instagram and on LinkedIn. So on Instagram, make sure I get this right. On Instagram, it is FGCU Com Careers, just COMM Careers. And then on LinkedIn, it's FGCU Communication Careers. So I highly recommend you check those out. And also, if you want to like test out your interest without signing up for a course, we also have an RSO on campus. It's FGCU FPRA. FGCU FPRA, just repeating that. Again, FPRA is short for the Florida Public Relations Association, which is a statewide association. We have a professional chapter here in Southwest Florida, but then a student chapter on campus. So if you check that out, they also have profiles on Instagram and Facebook, both for FGCU FPRA. So check those out and you can come to a meeting. Just come to a meeting and you're automatically a member and you can check it out and see if it might be something you want to pursue, in a course after that.
I want to thank everybody for coming and taking the time out of your day to listen to this and whoever else picks up on the video. So it's been a wonderful opportunity for me personally to talk about, what we're doing. And it's a good way of getting out the communication. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just want to echo that. Thank you for inviting us. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about our minor. I think it's a really great minor that goes well with pretty much any major. So if anybody has any questions about it, just reach out to me, send me a note. And I mean, if you just want to talk more about sales and you're not even interested in the minor or taking some of the classes or anything like that, please just reach out to me and let me know. Thanks for everybody for sitting and listening. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you to all of our panelists for coming in and participating with our students. I think this was a great session.